You know what? For all of you who've been waiting to either sort of criticize me for what I've said about Auburn or just criticize Auburn because you don't like them, let's do item number 2 on our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list, and we can start ripping on Auburn here because pretty clearly it was not a good day for the other Tigers in this game.
I have so many questions when they attack like this. The running game is so good from Auburn, and some of the things they do up front are so good. Obviously, they had some offensive line issues. They had some injuries. Casey Dunn goes down, and you have to slide Austin Golson around at 3 different positions there in the first half of the game. So I know that Gus Malzahn had to take that into a factor in terms of what they were going to do play calling wise, but when I see this offense, I see running game that you can get there with Kerryon Johnson, you can rack up yards, but I see no intermediate passing. And Jarrett Stidham is chunking the ball 40 and 50 yards downfield, hoping one of his wide receivers can't make a play. And when they don't, this is what the game looks like for them. When LSU's DBs can go up man-to-man and guard this wide receiver core from Auburn, they had no answers in the late in that game.
I mean, people are coming in hot here. Brandon Stabler says Auburn's going to have one more win. That's the Louisiana Monroe in a few weeks. Gus has to go. Jason Hughes says Gus needs to realize this is college, not high school, obviously referencing back to his time working as a high school coach in Arkansas. Jay Statham says, so does this mean the Auburn Love Fest is finally over? Thank you, he says. But how about those other points about, laying this loss, directly at the feet of Gus Malzahn and pointing out that Malzahn has kind of gone from being a coach that might be building a championship team, a guy that I really gave a lot of credit to here on the show for the work that he was doing with the Auburn program this season, to now being a guy saying offense didn't show up again in the second half when it needed to, and that's what Malzahn's calling card as a former play caller, but now as a more CEO-style head coach. I mean, are we really ready to go all in with both feet on the Malzahn criticism after this game?
I'm not. I still think they have a good team. I think that 8-4, 9-3 is going to be a good season for them. Whether or not they beat Alabama or beat Georgia or either one at the end of the year, I think is going to be a staple to how you end up feeling at the end of the year about this team. But it's like I said going into the year, Gus Malzahn's just good for a couple of these games, seemingly cannot get over the hump against some of these teams, and it happens every year that they lose a game they probably shouldn't have. And I think that begs the question, is he the right guy for this job long term? I think he is. I think he's a good coach. I think that their offensive line had some issues going into this game, had been ironing those out since Clemson, but they started to rear their ugly head again this week.
Joel Anthony Dean says Auburn tried to force it deep every play in the second half. I mean, I'll be the first to tell you, I have talked up Jarrett Stidham. Where was Stidham in the second half of this game, especially that final drive? Got a chance to watch that one from the press box there in Athens. I did not think Jarrett Stidham looked like the quarterback I expected him to look like midway through October. No. I thought he'd be, really one of the leaders in the SEC in terms of throwing the football. This was a no-show for Stidham for the most part. One of the games his team needs more than any other.
One of the more shocking outcomes as far as quarterback play goes that I can remember seeing in a long time. And I've been on the Etling bandwagon. I've been saying Danny Etling's the guy for this LSU team. You've been kind of on Jarrett Stidham's side. But if you'd have told me even last week that Danny Etling would seemingly outplay Jarrett Stidham, I'd have laughed at you. I think everybody would have. And yet, Danny Etling comes out and shows the gamesmanship and is able to do the things to lead his team to victory. It wasn't always pretty, but he put the ball where it needed to go. Jarrett Stidham not able to do that. I thought some of the throws he had looked absolutely ugly, sometimes not even giving his receiver core an opportunity to make a play.
Yeah, I'll be the first to tell you, man, I hope people appreciate this, that, I'm giving, opinions on this show every single day, but I also am going to be the first to tell you when one of these goes wrong. And for me, something I was wrong about on two fronts, both Stidham compared to Danny Etling. I thought that Danny Etling would be replaced by this point in the season. I thought that Miles Brennan would be the quarterback for LSU. The fact of the matter is Etling statistically is having a much better year than I thought he would, and this is the kind of game where I thought that Stidham would give Auburn a real advantage, and it just did not happen. And, I agree with you. I think Auburn can still be fine. They may, win every game but Alabama and go 9-3 at that point in time. You're talking about really a pretty good year, and actually from a record standpoint, an even better year than they had a year ago. But for a lot of Auburn fans, you got to admit that's probably not going to be good enough.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you start to question the games moving forward. Are they going to be able to beat Texas A&M team who got a big win this last week? Obviously, Georgia and Alabama are going to come later in the year. I think the biggest problems for Auburn this year will continue to be teams that can go man-to-man with their young receiver core and rush the passer. You saw it against Clemson. You saw it against LSU. They're going to see that later on in the year. I don't know so much about Texas A&M, but at least against Georgia and Alabama there in November. And I feel like everything's still out front for Auburn. Obviously, they've got an opportunity to still make some noise in the SEC. Some things need to fall their way, but this is a good football team. They're well-rounded. They're still good up front offensively. They've still got a great defense under Kevin Steele, and I think they'll still make some noise later.